Yes, yes, yes. Come in, come in. Fringe just makes everything better, don't you think? So much more fun. Anyway, who are you? What do you want? Ah, I see. Well, as I'm sure you may be aware that supersuits are strictly forbidden by the law these days, and I, though once was considered one of the greatest supersuit creators, am now restricted to high fashion. Technically, I'm not restricted to anything, but I choose high fashion because it is the most expressive and the most exciting. Either way, yes and no, I cannot help you. Darling, let me be clear. Money is not the issue here, all right? It's strictly against the law. I'm so sorry. So, if you don't mind, I do have some mending to do. Oh, they did they? Yes, that does complicate things just a bit. And I do so very much miss what wonderful, exciting things I used to get to make. Yes, it was me and Edna for quite some time. She really just took off. Did some amazing work. Had some issue with some capes, I do remember. But that aside, wonderful, wonderful woman, and in general, just a very creative, wonderful artist. Anyway, yes, And now, exactly how dire is the situation? Oh, I see. Yes, you will be requiring something. And you are entirely sure that law enforcement is unable to help on any such level? Well, all right then, for old time's sake. I have so wanted to create something recently. I've been working on new materials as well. Yes, quite quietly though. I'm really hoping that there's going to be some changes in the law coming up and some sort of, emancipation from this whole superhero, lawsuits and such. Either way. Anyway, what kind of thing are you looking for? Actually, no. Why don't I just tell you about some things? But first, just because I like good measure, I need to take a few measurements from you, just to ensure myself that whatever I do decide to show you from materials is going to fit the proportions that you need or suit your specific superpowers. Except, honestly, some of if it's just brain stuff right now, could you just tell me, because that does drastically shrink the amount of materials that I use. Yes, it doesn't require anything fancy upon the body, just some sort of breathable, sports-like fabric. Wonderful, wonderful, excellent. Okay, so now let's see. I will also have to measure your head as well. Yes, absolutely, for the masks. I assume you will be wearing a mask? Yes, I do certainly encourage them. Anonymity is just something that you cannot get back once it's gone. So I always encourage wearing a mask, and they do really honestly work as a wonderful accessory for the rest of the outfit. You can mix and match for your ensemble, for your mood, for whatever your talents are, special occasions. I just think they're quite wonderful. Regardless. Alright, so now I do across the shoulders here. Wonderful. And yes, I do need to be precise just because, as I said before, with body changes and elemental changes from time to time, it does really, affect how the suit is going to fit you, and especially how it may interact through action-packed circumstances or combat, physical activities. Yes. Now, I need to measure the legs. Is that all right with you? I'm not going to touch you, but I do need to measure the inseam. Is that all right? Thank you. Now, how long have you been worried about this certain situation? It's not that long at all. You haven't really had much time to prepare, have you? No, I assume not. And the legs? Well, certainly I assume that you will also be needing some sort of footwear. So it doesn't really make sense to do the rest of the outfit if you're not going to accessorize the feet as well. Of course. Now, the arms. And I will need to measure them separately because, shockingly enough, much of the time after one does a fair amount of stretching or shrinking, that adjustments back to their typical size is often not what it used to be. Alright, now around the bust. Alright, and the waist. Alright, and as I said before, I will need to do around the head. Alright, so pretty normal. And now it will be from forehead to nose and grab the wrong side for that one. Much better. And this will be from, I want to ensure that the mask itself as well is done appropriately. Well, of course, you can. It's not like a one-size-fits-all baseball cap. These are things that are going to suit your body in a way like nothing else. It's very exciting. Absolutely, I pride myself on the craftsmanship of my work. Now, as this is a customized suit for you, what exactly are your powers or power? Well, that is a very interesting one. It does provide a wide range of possibilities of materials or capabilities, absorbing others' powers to use as your own. Quite impressive, for one, but also quite difficult. to form an ensemble with. Well, I'm going to show you a few new materials that I've been constructing, and then we can decide how we can layer them within the fabric itself and put them upon the surface of the body. Yes? Wonderful. I think you're going to love these quite a lot. So, where to start? Alright, so first, for the aquatic variety. Now, this is going to look not like much, but I assure you, it's quite impressive. Now, yes, I'm sure it does appear as a regular mesh, but in fact, it is layered with delicate weavings that, when exposed to water or other immersive liquids, we could say saline type things, it causes each one of these individual threads to swell, and as they do, it becomes resistant to water itself or there's some other liquid form. It's quite fun to play around with, and also I very much appreciate this fabric specifically because when you step out of said liquid, it shrinks back to normal quite efficiently and becomes breathable to the skin once more. Now, it does come in a variety of colors. Don't feel that you're going to be appearing in a sheer costume. This is strictly a layered item, although I have some people requested for simply this material on its own. It's quite fun, but very naughty. However, I assume that's not what you're quite looking for, and it is, being so delicate and very thin, quite easily layered with other materials. So this is one that I do believe is going to be very efficient for you. Perfect. Next, this is a very fun one for me as well. This material. Now, quite a interesting pattern. It can be changed, however, but the quality of this resides in its ability to transform with the wear. It becomes invisible, and as well as the material becoming invisible, it also in turn makes you invisible. Now, many people do not need an assisted material to turn themselves invisible. That's correct. However, much like if you think of old movies like The Invisible Man, where rather than wrapping yourself in these horrific shreds of material, you can have something quite fashionable. Now, you can choose to have a pattern on it, or you can choose to have it simply plain. It does come in a few other colors. However, I, for one, am partial to this wonderful toxic green color. It's quite fun, but if you do not enjoy this pattern, which I will say that this is almost always a stealth-based situation, and if you're not working with a partner who may need to spot you at any point in time, I would probably recommend the bare plain rather than the pattern that we have here displayed. However, it is customizable, so if you do decide that you want to have this as well, then we can customize whatever simple pattern that you would like. No sort of intricate shapes, and mostly very basic line work or basic shapes. However, we can arrange those in any pattern that you'd like. Yes, it is very fun. Next up. So, assuming that you will have some manner of stretching or shrinking capabilities, this material is one that I've been working on for quite some time. It has a number of scales that transform and move with a body that will twist and bend. Now, upon first seeing this, many people think that it is for shape-shifting. It is not. Yet. I'm working on that too. But this material itself can stretch with the wear, and this acts as a form of protection for the body as you stretch. So as your appendages get farther and farther and farther and farther and farther away, much of the time it causes them to be exposed in a way that you wouldn't like, and somebody comes along and chops one right off, or it gets twisted around something. It's just quite a, how shall we say, sensitive situation from time to time. And what this material provides is a grid-like pattern to prevent any sort of wounding that might happen or take place while your limbs are in other areas. I highly recommend this, and it does come in other metallic colors if gold is not quite your tone, but you have a complexion that I do believe can match almost anything. So this is one that I highly recommend if you believe that you'll be coming in contact with any sort of stretching primarily. It will also shrink with the wear, although shrinking can only be reduced to half the size of the actual individual. So anything smaller than half of what your current proportions are, it stops shrinking with the body and just becomes fabric once more. Yes, unfortunately. It is bulletproof and fireproof within the parameters of your proportions, but unfortunately it does get weaker as it stretches. It does provide a significant layer of protection outside of just the normal, typical mesh or wicking material that one might be used to. Yes. So, we've touched on water, so let's touch on fire. Now, this material, one of my most proud inventions, similar to the material that they would use for a space suit. This is not a material used in the spacesuit. This material can stretch and flex with the user. It comes in a variety of shades, but gold is currently the one that I have available. This also only comes in the metallics. I also do carry this in flat black. I'm working on flat white, but I've not got there yet because I find white often quite boring. So, this, as well as being adaptable for the body, can withstand temperatures up to 2,500 degrees. Yes. Now, it will withstand that temperature for up to 4 hours. Anything after that, it does start to degrade a little bit. So keep that in mind in case you are going to be in a prolonged exposure, or if you yourself are igniting from within for longer than 4 hours. I hope that is not the case, but just in the event that that may occur at some point in time, it is a good thing to know. Yes, I think this would look absolutely darling on you. Well, one simply must know how the fabric drapes across the body, wouldn't you say? So, however, as I said before, it does come in a variety of gold, silver, bronze, any sort of pink, green, metallic that you could hope to have, purple. Wonderful variety of colors. So, now, this is one of my favorites. They're all my favorites, what can I say? So this material, now, it looks a bit patchy at the moment, but I assure you once on the body it does seal quite nicely. But this material specifically is almost like an organic skin that fits over your own persons. Now, the point of this is for anybody who sustains a large amount of punctures to their clothing or tearing or any sort of wounding to their typical suits due to combat, or this is particularly important for those who have hidden weapons, things that sprout from the body such as horns, wings. You can think of like claws for that matter. Anything like that that typically punctures through a material, rendering it quite obvious and more or less useless to use at a later date. Now, the wonderful part of this is that it is a self-healing material, so any puncture, any slice, cutting that it sustains for the initial severing of the material is healed as soon as the object is removed from the path of healing. Yes, it is quite exciting. It took me a very long time to put this together. And now, I will tell you this. It is a living material, so you must take very good care. Unfortunately, you do need to feed it on occasion, and to do that is actually quite simple. All you have to do is fill up a bowl with water, put a small amount of breadcrumbs, yeast, and sugar in there, and it will absorb into the fabric. Now, don't worry about the fabric changing in smell or anything like that. It, as I said, is a living organism, so it's consuming those things. It does not omit those smells once it's consumed. So any sort of sweat or blood or obviously liquid materials, that sort of thing that comes into contact with this, it will typically consume. Very rarely, and in fact I could think of no cases, has it been unable to attain some sort of nutrients from whatever it has come into contact with. So, and I suppose I can't show you all of them, but this will be the last one that I show you for right now, until we get this a little bit more nailed down. It's going to be this. Now again, it might not look like much, but it does stretch with the body. It takes the form of the body. It can be worn quite easily over any limb. It can be shaped to whatever you might need. Now, the exciting part of this material is that it acts as a metal conductor, so any sort of electrical currents, any sort of, a self-manipulated electrical currents that may be pulsing through you can manipulate around the body however it is that you'd like, and you can focus it anywhere you like due to this material. This also works for weather control, if you so desire, as in pulling electrical stimulus from the air to draw it into the body. It can also pass current along or into things, so it's got quite a variety. Anything more or less that has some sort of electrical current running through it, it's wonderful at controlling. So it's also quite breathable, which is nice, and due to its metallic material, it also works as a Kevlar. Yes, I like for a lot of materials to have a secondary nature about them. I don't like to focus on just one element all the time when crafting such fine materials. You really want to pay attention to the gamut of situations that one might run into. But so beautiful. I just absolutely adore this one. So much fun. Now, seeing as that I do think those provide you quite a bit of range in materials and options as far as what powers you may be drawing out of people and getting to use yourself. Still very exciting. This is my first large project like that, I will admit. Most of the time it's just one particular thing. Yes. Now, what we do need to remember is our anonymity. So, we need to move on to the masks. Now, there is a variety, but I will show you just the basics for today, and we can do moderations on those a little bit later on when we decide what might be the most effective for you in particular. So, let's see. Here it is. So, these are the basic mask choices. I would say that these are probably the most popular that were made and purchased by superheroes in the past. Now, you are not restricted to these varieties. However, I'll go through them, and if they don't suit what it is that you're looking for or are not styled to the way that you would like, we can certainly handcraft something and come up with a whole new original idea. So, this first one is the basic raccoon mask, something that covers the eyes in a burglar-esque type form. Now, I think this one is rather simplistic. If you are going for a more simplified look, oftentimes this can be the best choice for you. Now, this comes in almost any sort of material coloring that you could possibly like. Color spectrum for it is quite endless, I must say, so we can adapt that in any fashion that you would like. It also comes with 2 other varieties of eye shape in case you were trying to adapt any sort of eye wear underneath or inside. It really depends on your own personal comfort and what you might prefer. Out of all of these, I typically suggest the very original. It's a classic look. It doesn't really go out of style. Now, we can also go down to the cat eye, which is kind of a modified version of the raccoon. So it works both ways. It works out and it also works up. So these tend to peak at the top of the forehead, almost just right above the brow line. Now they can extend farther back if you would like some sort of wraparound in that sense. However, if you would not, we can keep it just basic in this manner. We also have this very fashionable, typical cat eye. This was very popularized. Actually, they both were fairly popular within the 70s and 60s. I just don't think they go out of style. I absolutely love them. And again, these come in a vast number of shades. I do find them a bit more flashy. They tend to be more for the themed costumes, so anybody who is more of the animal kingdom or does more fanciful fairies, goblins, that type of thing, witches tend to pick this kind of mask, although I have seen it done quite successfully on more of the elemental heroes as well. So don't limit yourself, certainly. If you do like this look, we can always customize anything that you'd like. Now these are my absolute favorite, and I think one that is incredibly underrated. So they have a full goggle on them, covering the eyes and keeping them well protected. I think that is one of those things that people think that they're not going to need, but you in particular, being both of the aquatic variety and the air variety, also super speed, you're going to want a goggle. Can you just think of the bugs that are going to get in your eyes? Horrific. So I highly suggest this version to many of those people. Now these unfortunately only come in different leather materials. I don't use real leather. No, simply not. That would be dreadful and cruel. But I do use leather-like materials. They are customized to adapt to, obviously, your particular power. And in this case, I would probably have to add a few separate materials to the mask itself to ensure that you are covered along whatever lines you may need. So adapted for super heat, super cold, any sort of weather changes, electrical currents, water exposure, any sort of dramatic thing that you can imagine. So it is a bit difficult. Now, they were in the past customized in this way with the fin added to it. It can also be made into a full cap. That's what this extra part is. But it can be adapted with a fin, so when you are going at super speeds or for any sort of high speed or slow speed swimming, you have a fin to help guide you through either the air or the water. It helps navigate you a bit more simply. Now, that can also be customized for color, just the fin itself in particular, not the base material. The goggle glass, however, is quite customizable as well, so you can more or less mix and match have you please there, except for this base material. I think that's an excellent choice. We'll have to pick out some colors together and to go to find some extra things. Now, for your costume in particular, let's see. Let me grab my materials very quickly. For you, I'm feeling more of like a unisex design. I feel like we don't want to go anything too flashy or anything too dramatic, something that would equip you quite nicely with the materials that we have at hand, and also for your variety of powers that you might possess. Now, again, no capes. They cause a lot of issues. We all learn our lesson in the same way. But I think for you, it'd probably be best to have some sort of utility belt, due to the fact that most of the time I like to customize my costumes to be rather form-fitting to the body. Now, that's mostly for your protection, so you don't have a lot of loose clothing dangling around. There's less grip for other enemies, so to speak, to latch onto, and nothing to get caught or snagged, nothing like that. So it's nice to have it cling to the body so you know exactly where the material is going. And colors, I'm feeling that they should probably be more neutral, less flashy. If you're going to have to blend in at a moment's notice, you want to make sure that you look fairly common, but if need be, you can hide in plain sight, so to speak. And shoes. Now, some prefer a Chelsea type boot. I prefer mid-calf when suggesting for a range of powers. I think something with a lot of grip is always good, with a secured ankle, something a little bit above. Chelsea boots just tend to rub the foot the wrong way. Can oftentimes just be more of a collection place for stones and weird materials. I like something that is, again, snug to the body. Now, I assume that you'll want those zippered, correct? Of course, quick on, quick off, just in case. And we most certainly have to get you some gloves. I think just a wrist glove would be best suited for you, don't you? Yes. Same concept. You want it to be there because it's useful for when you need it, but in case you have to take them off and put them back on quite quickly, I think a shorter, more efficient glove is the best way to go. I have watched some people struggle trying to stretch out the entire glove over their arm. It is a process, and I quite frankly don't understand why they do it. There's form and there's function, and people get caught up on the form often, way too often. So I believe that function should be quite important, right along with the fashion aspects of it. Do you have a logo of sorts yet? A emblem that you are using? Not yet. You haven't decided on a name? Don't worry about that. That can always come later. Now, mask we will decide for another time. Now, I feel a sleeveless design would suit you quite nice. I know some people are worried about exposing their arms, and quite frankly, I get it. I understand. But I think for breathability's sake, for ventilation, for the body, you want to make sure that you're getting a lot of oxygen to the body for both the skin and just in general a cooling aspect. It's one of those things that I think people very much underestimate. However, whenever I do that, some people used to put a cape with it so you could wrap yourself like a shawl whenever you got chilled. I think that's also a very terrible idea. But I do prefer a jacket, something cropped again, so there's less things dangling about and drifting in the wind, something that's kind of nice and snug but still gives you a good sense of security. You can also, I think it would be exciting if we could remove that and also use that as a sort of shield. How would that be? Quite fun, right? Yes, I think I've got just the material for that. So, I think, how do you feel about crew collars or a short collar? Excellent. And for purposes of getting in and out, would you prefer zipper or buttons? Excellent. I prefer to put a zipper down in front, and this is because I think for either men, women, anything in between, a zipper works as an excellent function to control not only your overall appearance as far as the person that you're trying to portray yourself as, whether it's seductive or utilitarian is up to you, but I very much prefer putting it directly in front of the body, and then that way it's easy to control. Yes. Well, I think a couple of extra notes. I think this is a wonderful start. Let me sleeve this for you. Alright, now this is what we have to start. If you want to change any of the colors, any of the themes overall, we can absolutely do that, but I made it sleeveless as we discussed. Here is your utility belt, as the material is going to be quite close to the body. Now, I did add padding to the knees, shins, and upper thighs, and this is because I think it is a very underappreciated part of the body that ends up taking quite a sufficient amount of damage during combat that many people don't think about. Now, military boots, they are not lace-up, they are zip-up, but they do have quite a bit of traction. The jacket, short neck here, it will zip in the front. I prefer a rolled sleeve. I think that's quite the look. But you can also wear it long, and the gloves, as we discussed, quite short. For tactical purposes, I put your mask up here, but obviously we can work into that detail later. So, in the meantime, feel free to take that with you. I will have to do a couple more mock-ups and material testing, but I will be happy to call you back for the initial fitting to see how it works on your persons. Wonderful working with you, but as you know, as I said in the beginning, I'm a very busy lady, so fashion doesn't create itself, and it's always there waiting. So toodaloo, I'll get your contact information on the way out.